Well, it's lovely to be with you again after what seems like a very long time. A few things have been happening, haven't they, in that time, I'm afraid. But it's great to see you all. As you know, Lent starts very soon. You should already have made sure you've got in your ingredients for pancakes, because it's this Tuesday. Yeah, so this is the Sunday before Lent begins, and it's Transfiguration Sunday. But first, I'd like you to direct you in a slightly different direction. I wonder if you're familiar with the Disney film Beauty and the Beast. Yes? Oh, you'll know the story, I'm sure, as well. But at the climax of that film, what happens is the beast is lifted up into the air and turned round, and he's bathed in a dazzling light. And out of that, he emerges as his true self, as a handsome prince. And maybe you'll also remember a similar scene in the film Shrek. Yes? Again, at the end, I don't know if I've ever seen the whole film myself, but Shrek the ogre falls in love with Princess Fiona, who is a beautiful princess. At the end of the film, there is something similar. The same dramatic music plays. There's the same light envelops the couple. And then there's a surprise, because as the light fades, it isn't Shrek hasn't turned into a handsome prince. No, Princess Fiona has turned into an ogre. So this film challenges our expectations. It subverts the narrative. It's not what we expect. Now, I promise you, there is a point to this, and I will return to it in a few minutes. But let's look now at Jesus' transfiguration. Transfiguration means a complete change of form or appearance into a more beautiful or spiritual state. A transformation of appearance in this way, but in the sense here of revealing what is actually true and essential in Jesus' identity. It's as if the veil's being drawn back, enabling the disciples to catch a glimpse of his true glory. And we read that Jesus' face is radiant, shining like the sun. His clothes are dazzling white. And the disciples can briefly see the spiritual realities which are normally hidden from them. And as we've found out already, Moses and Elijah appear and speak to Jesus, the two greatest of the Jewish prophets, representing the law and the prophetic tradition. And their appearance affirms that Jesus is carrying on their work and also bringing it to completion. He stands in their tradition, but he is bringing their work to a fulfillment. You know, the mountain is often the place where God meets people in the Bible, isn't it? It's a place of revelation, often a holy place, a place of meeting with God. Moses on Mount Sinai, Elijah on Horeb, and Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. They stand in the same sort of line of tradition. They're places of revelation. And so we get the phrase mountaintop experiences, those times of heightened feeling of revelation, of inspiration or insight, and specifically times when we sense a particular closeness of God, some sort of new understanding or revelation of God. Now, we have those times, don't we, in life? quite often they can come in a worship setting, particularly if you go to something like Spring Harvest or Teze or Soul Survivor, these sorts of things. Often they can be times when we feel we're on the mountaintop, we're close to God, we're we feel filled with the Spirit. But it can also be just a time when, just in the middle of ordinary life, we have a sense of God drawing close, and or perhaps of us being unable to see the closeness of God to us. It doesn't mean that he's come nearer, but just that the veil's been lifted a bit. We can appreciate it more. Can be in an experience of healing or in a time of prayer. And the mountaintop experience can come through nature. You know, have you ever been in a really dark place at night and seen the stars and been moved to awe and wonder? You know, that can be an experience that touches us with the divine. However, they come in different ways. And mountaintop experiences are precious. They can change us, inspire us, strengthen us for when times are hard. But they don't last, do they, normally? And in the Gospel of Luke, straight after the Transfiguration, straight after this wonderful revelation and affirmation of his ministry, Jesus comes down the mountain straight into problems. And the problem is he finds a boy who's being troubled by an unclean spirit. His father has brought him to the other disciples and begged them to heal him, and they haven't been able to. And Jesus has to deal with this. He's straight down to this difficult case. He's straight from the glory and the affirmation into the everyday world and the unglamorous demands of work and difficult problems and unbelief and the needs of the poor and needy crying out. In the story of the Transfiguration, Peter wants to hang on to the mountaintop experience. It's amazing, isn't it, how we heard how he sort of blurts out. He doesn't know what to say. He feels, he's babbling. He feels he ought to say something. But what he comes out with is, Master, it's good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what he was saying. He was somehow trying to freeze the experience, prolong it. But God doesn't intend us to live on the mountaintop. Our life is lived mainly in the valleys and on the plains, in the streets. But God's there too. That's what we need to learn to recognize. God is there in our struggles and doubts. He's there in the faithful discipleship which takes us on our everyday journey. He's there in the patient service. God is with us in the ordinary routines of life and in the painful moments when we experience bereavement or illness, relationship problems, rejection or discouragement. Now, I did mention earlier, I talked about narratives that challenge our expectations, where they subvert what we expect to happen. And that actually happens here. Because this story of Jesus' transfiguration, this moment of dazzling glory, doesn't come at the end of his story. Here it is, right in the middle of the gospel, chapter 9 out of 24. It isn't the climax. After the light dies and the cloud of God's near presence dies away, Jesus goes back to business as before, teaching, healing, freeing people from bondage. The disciples tell no one. It's an anticlimax. Because the climax of the gospel comes later. And the moment when Jesus' true nature is decisively revealed to everyone comes on another hilltop at the cross. Tom Wright, former bishop and New Testament scholar, puts it like this, and I found this quite interesting and helpful. I'll read you what he says. He says, "Here on a mountain is Jesus revealed in glory. There on a hill outside Jerusalem is Jesus revealed in shame. Here his clothes are shining white. There they have been stripped off, and soldiers have gambled for them. Here he is flanked by Moses and Elijah, two of Israel's greatest heroes, representing the law and the prophets. There he is flanked by two brigands, representing the level to which Israel had sunk in rebellion against God. Here a bright cloud overshadows the scene. There darkness comes upon the land. Here Peter blurts out how wonderful it all is. There he is hiding in shame after denying he even knows Jesus. Here a voice from God himself declares that this is his wonderful son. There a pagan soldier declares in surprise that this really was God's son. There's a word in the account of the Transfiguration that shows that it's pointing clearly forward to the cross. It's in verse 31. Moses and Elijah were talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. And the word departure is exodus. They talked about his exodus. And it looks back to when God had saved his people from slavery in the time of Moses. But it's looking forward, because now, through Jesus, God is going to free all people from slavery and bondage. And the act that will free people is not the splendor, the dazzling light, the voice from heaven. It's the revelation of God's glory, and our freedom is going to come about in a moment of self-giving and weakness and dying. And Jesus' cross and resurrection is going to break out humanity and creation from the prison of sin and injustice, offering forgiveness and life in all its fullness. We need to hold them both together, the mountaintop and the cross, the glory and the humiliation, the affirmation and the rejection, the light and the dark, all are woven into the story of our salvation. The Transfiguration affirms Jesus' mission, and it points forward to his completion at Calvary. And I'd just like to consider that this verse 35. A voice came from the cloud saying, "This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." This is my son. Here's a message for us today. Listen to him. Listen to his teaching. Take it in. Make it part of our lives. Believe in him. Trust. Put your trust in him. And follow him in sharing the good news, in proclaiming God's kingdom and serving those in need. As I said, we're entering Lent soon. And Lent traditionally offers us the opportunity to examine our priorities, to embrace change where it's needed, and to remember the needs of our neighbors. The transfiguration of Jesus needs to be a moment of revelation that extends beyond the mountaintop experience. It needs to inform and inspire what we do in our daily life. We need to hold on to the glimpse of glory that we get in times when we're on a high and in times when life is a slog. But we can't freeze it in time. It should be a spur to discipleship and service. It's about catching sight of the glory of God and then going on to work with God to make his kingdom more of a reality among us. Amen.